Alrighty, 3, 2, 1.
Hi everyone, welcome to
The Vulnerability Tour, episode 3.
You know, eventually we're gonna start losing.
Nobody saw that.
We're gonna start losing count, right?
We are gonna start losing count, but we're on number 3, so we haven't lost count yet. So
Yay!
until then, we're gonna keep it rocking. This episode is gonna be centered around healing. We're not really sure exactly where it's going to go yet, but we do know that we just want to share our own personal experiences of,
we're just going to have a conversation about healing.
yeah, how we've just dealt with just life, you know, and like different things that we've learned along the way that have worked for us. And again, we're not here to give advice, but we are open to hearing feedback on what has worked for you guys. And this is what's worked for us. So I'll let you start.
Well, I think I'd like to start with what healing even means.
Sure.
You know, I think that healing has its own definition, but I also believe it can be very personal. I have my own personal perception and definition of healing, and you probably do too.
Definitely.
My perception of healing is going through the turbulent waves, getting to the other side, looking back, realizing that you went through the turbulent waves and you survived, and that there's acceptance around that, there's peace around that, and it's healing. I think it's kind of like a pat on the back for yourself.
I think in some regards for me, I kind of see it as like, it's not finite. It's not you've reached a moment and you've healed. I think healing is a process. You know, I think it's a journey. It's an ongoing process. Like, I don't know if I'm ever going to be completely healed, you know, like, but I do think that time heals all wounds. Yeah. And just going through experiences and looking back, like you said, and being able to see things that
you couldn't see
ultimately, we're like
turbulation.
Yeah, it was like you were blinded during that period of time. Yeah. But to be able to look back and to be able to appreciate where you're at this moment, to know that you got through it and you came out of it. And I think a lot of times, especially with myself, when I'm dealing with something difficult and I'm in the middle, right? Like I'm in the middle of the funk. Yeah. I think the biggest blessing that I can give myself or the grace that I can give myself is to say, dude, you've already been through something before. Yes. And just like you're feeling now, you felt that then. Yeah. So if you got out of it then you can do it now. Yeah. You know, and I think that's a huge part of it. And I think it's an ever going process that's completely different for everybody, because people heal in different ways.
That's so true.
So I think the first step would really be like
speeds as well.
Yeah, what I was gonna say is I think the first step of healing is to know that it looks completely different for everybody, right? Like you're gonna define if you feel like you healed or not. And I think a lot of times as humans, and I'll speak for myself, I think that sweeping things under the rug and just not looking at them is more than likely me just procrastinating and calling it healing, because you don't really want to address it.
Do you think you've done that?
I mean, I definitely think I've done that. You know, like if, you know, let's dive into the nitty gritty. Like, so when my family got divorced, my parents got divorced. Really, my family got divorced.
Yeah,
you know,
I was about to correct you and say, well, actually, it was a separation of all. Yeah, so the whole unit.
Exactly. So it was a unit of 3, I guess I would say, plus my sister who was already married, but. You know, there was just, you know, both of my parents ended up living in different places. I ended up going to college. My sister was already married. And so like it kind of disseminated the family, you know, in a sense. But to answer your question, have I felt like I've done that? I think definitely. You know, I was 15 years old and I was experiencing like a divorce. And of course, when you're 15, no one's going to tell you what to do with your life. You already have it all figured out at 15. So you think,
true. What
right?
grade were you in?
I was a junior.
A sophomore? Junior?
Maybe I was 15 or 16. Junior or junior. Because I'm the youngest in my grade, so I think I was a junior.
Okay.
And definitely all I did was sweep it under the rug, push it to the side, continue to live my life. But in hindsight, now that I'm, you know, ahead looking back, all I did was try and fulfill a hole that I had with like a bunch of other things instead of actually addressing it, And so I think probably the biggest that thing that I took away from it was that the longer that you sweep it under the rug and you don't heal and you don't deal with it, the more it builds up, the more it like builds toxicity in you. Yeah, it's like the more it builds like the toxic energy inside of you. And I think, you know, resentment comes out of that. I think just like I had this uber high sense of independence, of feeling like I don't need anybody. Like I can do this by myself. Like I'm going to go hustle. I'm going to go do my thing. And I started working. I was working at Chick-fil-A and I was working at a Mexican restaurant. And I was just like doing whatever. I was like, dude, I'm making my bread. I had this old crappy Honda Civic and I was like, I got my car. I can drive wherever I want. I got cash. I can do whatever I want, you know?
Felt like a mini adult at 15.
I felt like an adult. And in hindsight.
So where do you think the healing started there?
So I don't think the healing really started until it was full circle, because while I left and I, you know, went out and I did the whole typical thing. I don't know if that's like a typical thing, but I'm assuming it is. It's just like whenever you deal with like such a big event in your life that, you know, you go from the event happening and then you go from like all the different things that you do to try and fill that hole, and then like
all
to
the distractions.
Yeah, all the distractions and all the things that you thought would work, and then basically you just start plummeting down. You're like, none of this shit's working, none of this is helping, none of this is doing, and then you get back to the same point that you should have started from the beginning, which is I need to address this problem. You know? And so that for me was when I finally realized, is because I had got to a point like 3 years later, and I remember the way that I thought I was going to deal with it was I'm just going to close myself off. You know, like if I can't trust in y'all, then I can't trust nobody. Like y'all can't get access to me. So I isolated myself and I took myself out.
So
and
the real healing began
the real healing
isolation.
Well, after the isolation and really regret. Like regret really started to hit me, because family for me has always been a very huge component of my life. And I think that when that happened, I was like, screw it. I don't need family. But really, dude, like the only thing I needed was family. So the full circle moment was me to actually go to my mom and my dad, and, you know, in full transparency, you know, this is me being really vulnerable about my story, is that, you know, I really just cut off my family. Like I just cut them off. Like they didn't get access to me. I mean, I'm telling you, I was the type of kid that like you could call me a million times, you could text me a million times, you could email me a million times. Like, dude, I was not going to answer. Like I was so stubborn. I was so stubborn. I know
that you have a good relationship with your parents.
Yeah. Like I was just so stubborn. So I think the moment, the full circle moment was me thinking, yo, I just lost like 2 years with my family. You know, like I just lost two people. I mean, I just lost 2 years of being able to spend time with the people that I love and I appreciate and I care for. And the only thing, and probably what ate me up alive the most was that I knew that they wished that I was willing to have the conversation. Like I feel like what hurt me was that they wanted that connection and I was like cutting it, you know? So when I finally got to that realization, like, dude, I need to heal through this. The first thing that I did was I needed to learn how to unhave this habit to isolate myself or to just shut off. And I'll be honest.
That was I want to, sorry to interrupt you,
you're
but
good.
I do want to say that I believe that was probably a defense mechanism that you were using.
I mean, that's how I survived it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how I survived the divorce.
That was your body protecting itself from the chaos that was happening.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, it just came back to bite you.
Yeah. So I think that in hindsight, really, and now when I'm confronted with like just any type of like big life-changing type of scenario, it's to remember for me, because I remember being such a delinquent type of kid, to like now like feeling like I make my parents proud, that like I make my sister proud, like I make my family proud, like they're proud of me. But to know that I went from there to here, and when I was here, I was like, dude, I'll never make it there. You know, so whenever new obstacles come, I remind myself like, dude, if you could do it then, you can do it now. And so I don't know. I think the healing process was really me finally saying, yo, I'm going to put my guard down because I really don't have it all figured out. You know?
So at the end of the day, it was really you being vulnerable.
Yeah. I mean, it was me being transparent.
Taking down your walls.
Yeah. It was me being vulnerable and transparent and saying,
and that's when
I know that I've been trying to position myself like this. And I know that I've just been, you know, trying to put off like that I'm this big bad monster and I can do whatever I want in my life. And the funny thing is that when I made that full circle moment, I think both of my parents were just like, I was just waiting for this moment.
Oh,
You know,
that's awesome.
and that's my
Yeah.
situation. So maybe that's not everybody's, but for me, that was so healing to like have the conversation with my dad and be like, dude, I'm so sorry that I haven't been around. Like, I'm so sorry that I like just cut you guys off. I'm so sorry. And like just pouring that all out and feeling like, oh my God, like I could get rejected. Like, and I didn't want to feel
Yeah.
rejected, to know that he just responded with, Rafi, we all make mistakes. Like, it's all good. Like, I will always love you no matter what you do, you know?
Yeah, that's
And so
beautiful.
luckily I have parents that treat me like that. Like, luckily I have parents who, you know, I understand, and I'm able to understand now that they were just humans, you know,
Yeah.
like there was something clearly not working.
Yes.
And they made that decision, and that was the decision that was made. And it was very difficult for everybody in the family. And to this day, I mean, I think there's like small lingering things that still affect the dynamic of the family, but we're in such a better place now. Like, we're in such a better place now. And I really believe that the first step was, dude, I have to confront this battle. You know, the healing, I feel like, really came down to the moment when I said, all right, it's time. It's time that I'm tired. I'm tired of having this mountain on my back, walking around in the world, knowing I had this mountain of emotional energy that was just holding onto and dragging with me, and had my feet like freaking locked in. I'm dragging this shit like all the time. And, you know, and small things in my everyday life would start to trigger it, you know, and I would just like react thing. And looking back, it was because of my family situation, and it didn't even have anything to do with that. So anyway, that's my experience with healing. What about you? I know that you know, we're dating, and I know a big part of the beginning of our relationship was overcoming the trauma that you had experienced in your previous relationship.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
So how'd you heal with that? I remember I think you inspired me a lot with how I saw that you dealt with it, because in those times, I remember I went to your house and you had all that stuff in your room.
Oh, you remember that?
I remember that.
You saw all those quotes in my room?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
I do. Okay, so full disclosure, Jennifer was a part of my life for a long time before I ever saw her in a romantic sense, even though I always thought she was hot. But her brother and I were pretty good friends in high school, and I used to go over to their house all the time. And
You know what?
So what?
This is going to be a little teaser. I think we should talk about that.
Oh, we're going to talk. Okay. We will. Go ahead. Let's talk about this.
Our story is
It's
pretty
fire.
awesome.
It's fire.
Okay. So that's a tease. That means that you have to subscribe
Hey.
to listen to that.
Hey.
Okay.
Got it.
So I love how you mentioned the quotes in my room, because that was I think a big part of my personal healing. So just long story short, I was in an on and off relationship for a few years, 5 years. And man, it took everything in me to move forward. It took everything in me to say, I'm done with that. And, you know, that's a form of grief when you lose people that were so important to you at a certain time and for a really long time, and then you lose them. That's another form of grief. So, I mean, back then I was 18, 19, not knowing that I was experiencing grief. But my true healing happened around 22, 23, when I think what really shifted things for me was making a decision that I wanted to move forward, and being so tired of, that was the first time I ever experienced depression. And
What were you tired of?
being so tired of feeling down, of crying, of complaining, of trying to fix something that was already broken. I was tired of moping around the house. I was tired of feeling lack of motivation. I was just so tired of it. I was so done with it. And you know what? I also was tired of feeling very alone, because I remember at that point in time that I had a support system, but I remember that they were not the ones who got me to heal. And I want to highlight that, because I do believe that support systems are extremely important. However, you can heal all on your own.
Yeah, like don't rely on them to pull you out the funk. Like make sure you have responsibility yourself.
I healed all on my own with the help of God. That's it. My personal story of the biggest healing journey I've ever been on. And the reason that started is because, so I grew up Catholic my entire life. And then when I got older, I met a friend who invited me to Victory World Church in Gwinnett. And I started going to Fusion. And Fusion was like these, like youth nights from ages from 18 to 35, where you basically go and it's a pastor, you have worship, and there's the pastor talking about just life, things you can connect with. And she took me a few times, and I remember, she had to ask me a couple of times, like, hey, come to church with me. Hey, come to church with me. Every time.
Because that always sounds so weird, right? Yeah. That always sounds like, okay,
no, thanks. I'm good. I'm going to continue being sad.
Yeah.
And feeling sorry for myself and being stuck in this hole, in this darkness. And once I started, eventually I said yes. And once I started doing that, I felt lighter. I felt a sense of, I'm not alone. When for the longest time I felt alone. And I think that when you're healing and that whole journey, it can feel really lonely. So when I experienced going to church, I experienced God for the first time. And then I just felt company. It's hard to explain, but I felt like I was not alone anymore. And that combination with I'm tired of everything that I've been feeling equaled I'm going to make the decision of I'm going to start healing. And no, it was not clear of I'm going to start healing, right? Because I was still, when you're trying to heal, I also think it's important to mention that my mind was not clear at all. There's a lot of emotional instability that's going on there. Your mind is not clear. You're not making good decisions.
You're like, yo, did I even make the right decision to leave?
Yeah, right. There's a lot of doubt. There's lack of motivation. There's so many things that are draining you. So that decision did not sound like that. It did not sound like, okay, today I'm deciding that I'm going to heal. No, it was more so, I'm tired of this crap and I'm liking this. It was like that, Yeah. I'm feeling
this. Makes me feel like shit. Right. And this makes me feel a lot better. I'm going to keep doing more of these.
So
healthy right? Of course.
And I will say that at that point in time, I was, when this started happening, I was 22. So Chris was how old? Because I have a little brother who is 11 years younger than I am. And he was a big part of my healing process because I can't help but smile around a kid. And Chris was always running around, but he was also a kid, So he was always smiling, hyper, always wanting to be around me. And I remember the quotes that you mentioned in my room, he sat next to me while I did them. And what Rafa's talking about was, at that point in time when I had made the decision that I wanted to heal, I decided to look up on Pinterest and Google different quotes that I read and immediately uplifted me. Immediately, I felt a sense of lightness, a sense of moving forward. And it's not like cheesy positive quotes that I had on there. It was more like, hey, you can get to the other side.
Encouragement.
It was, I remember there was one that said something along the lines of and then she became a hero, after all of it, And I had construction paper. I brought glitter. I printed these quotes. I cut up. I had a whole night. And I remember.
Honestly, dude, I remember looking at it and her entire room looked like a vision board. Legit. And honestly, I thought it was so cool because I had never seen that. I had never seen somebody hacking the quotes, right? Because I feel like at that point, quotes weren't, maybe, of course, quotes have always been big, but nowadays you're on Instagram and you see quotes all the time.
That's
but
true.
but
But at that point in time, it wasn't even.
bro, like you must have done your research. Like
I
you must
did.
have gone and looked them up and you printed them out and you put them everywhere. And
But I
just
was very intentional with the wording that I was going to put around my walls.
yeah, and I think the coolest part about it was like, dude, you could aimlessly be looking anywhere and there it would be, and you would catch the quote. You could go to the bathroom and boom, there'd be a quote. Like you're walking in and there, boom. So it was like in all these little things. And to this day, I mean, we live together.
Yeah.
Our house is filled with quotes. And honestly, it's the
I carry
best
that
thing.
everywhere
Everybody
with
that
me.
comes to our house always says, yo, I love the quotes, because they really just, they're like little reminders.
Yeah.
You know, they're like little reminders that you can't. So I'm sorry I cut you off your story,
It's
but
okay.
it was so cool. Yeah.
So I remember when I did look up those quotes, it was later on in the day, and I remember sitting with little Chris. At this point in time, I was living in my parents' house for a while, and I remember little Chris decided to join me because, of course, there's colors, right? It's construction paper. So I had the TV on, and little Chris was sitting there helping me, and I made like probably this much in quotes, right? Construction paper, and I glued things together, and I put them all on my 4 walls and in my bathroom. And let me tell you, that made the biggest difference in me mentally when I felt so alone, when I felt like I had a support system, but I didn't really feel like they were there.
Yeah.
And it's not their fault. It's just like sometimes you just got to heal on your own. Like the only way out is you. The only
That's
way
so
out
true.
is you and God. And I feel like a combination of having those quotes around my room and having the positivity and the lightness of my little brother around, and having a friend that was pushing me to engage in something that was making me uncomfortable but also really happy, which was church. And then I found true healing when I really felt connected to God. I at 23, it's the best year of my life so far.
I mean, I think a huge part of it too is that, especially with those type of things, you know, that you're constantly, your mind wants you to like think about it. Like your mind wants you to like, oh no, like I'm thinking about this. I want to think. So, you know, you need those kind of things that are keeping you like, hey, you're here, stay here, stay here, stay here, stay here, stay here. And for me, that thing is basketball. You know, like for me, that thing is like, let's pick up a basketball. Like I remember actually, dude, like when my family was going through all that, I remember, dude, I would come home, do my homework, I would put my stuff inside, I would shoot for like 9 hours.
Wow.
Like I would just be outside. I would just be listening to, that was when Drake had like just popped on the scene. Like Young Money was like on fire at that point. And so I was just jamming
that
out.
was good.
I was just jamming out
That was
to,
just
I
a
can
good
make
time.
your bed rock. And I would just be like, like jocking, just like jacking up shots like all the time. And to this day, like whenever I feel like I need, and honestly, it's a good combination of exercise and all that, right?
Of
Like
course.
exercise helps you
I mean,
expel
your
a lot.
endorphins are just
Yeah, but I mean, I just felt like that was my safe space. So I would just encourage people to feel like, you know, like what is that thing for you? What is that thing that you can step into that makes you feel present in that moment, that nothing around you is there? And I think a lot of it is like creativity, you know, like maybe it's reading or journaling, or maybe it's not. Maybe it's something like complete. Maybe it's just whatever you want it to be, you know, watching TV. It can be anything.
I think that healing can look, like we mentioned in the beginning, it can look so different for anyone. But the way that I'm healing now, past 23 years later, is by including yoga in my everyday life. You know, it's by having good friendships. It's by protecting my energy. That's another form of healing, in my opinion. It's also being in a healthy relationship with you, coming out of a toxic one. To me, that I'm still healing. I'm still working from the trauma that I got from that relationship. I'm still working towards something healthy with you.
I mean, I feel the same way with you. Like, I think when we first started dating, I remember, and I don't know if you remember this, but we were driving, and I remember it was one day. We were literally together for a whole day, and in that one day, you had called your parents like 3 times.
Oh, yeah. I remember.
And you were like, oh, and I would just remember, I was like, man, that's so cool. You know, like you talk to your family like that often, because, you know, after the divorce, like we kind of all went our separate ways. We still talk very frequently, but it wasn't to like the point where I have to talk to them every day. Like there's not a day you don't talk to your parents.
Yeah.
And so I think the same thing. Like I look at you and I'm still healing too. Like I'm still healing of trying to be the pusher, right? Like be the let me be like, now the roles are flipped. Like my mom doesn't need to be calling me. Like I need to be calling my mom. Like,
So sometimes healing can be a lifelong journey.
I agree.
I mean, I can even imagine, to not to get morbid, but whenever my parents pass away, because it's going to happen one day,
For sure.
I'm never going to get over that.
Honestly, that's like a big fear of mine. Honestly, not even just my parents, just like anybody that I really truly am. Like you were mentioning about my granddad, you know, like my granddad passing away was very difficult for me. But even then, like my grandfather, he was in Colombia. Yeah. And so like I spent many hours with him, and I just appreciated him. And he was such a sweet soul. But at the end of the day, like he also wasn't right next to me all the time. So while the grieving process was definitely still there and definitely, you know, difficult for our family, man, like I could only imagine what it would have been like if it was like that's my dad's side of the family. Like my mom's side of the family's here, and I see them like 5 times a month, you know? So like, man, I can only imagine. And so, you know, I'm grateful that you have those experiencing. And I think healing, a lot of it is allowing yourself to have the grace to know that you don't have to just get over it quick. And I think people a lot of times look for that super quick fix, quick hit. What do I do?
Unfortunately, healing doesn't work that way.
Yeah. Which is why people end up filling their stuff with like, you know, like that's where alcohol and drug addiction and just like unhealthy patterns of like living your life, because you need that quick fix, because you definitely forget it. Like it works. That's the powerful part about it, that it works, you know. But to hone yourself in and say, hey, like I'm actually not addressing my problem. I'm really just really sweeping it under the rug. That doesn't do a service for anybody. And so,
well, it's way more detrimental to your mental health to suppress your all those emotions that you carry with you. It's a lot more detrimental. It's a lot, though it's harder, though it's more challenging, the healing is really what is helpful for our mental health.
The process of healing. Yeah, for sure. And with that, I think our time is up. That was fire. Honestly, that was tough, but the vulnerability towards getting more vulnerable by the episode. Right. But that was really good, guys.
Thank you so much for listening.
I think I just want to share with you guys that the world needs healing right now. Yeah. The world needs this space. And so we want to learn from you guys. Please leave in the comments how you guys deal with healing. You know, what has worked for you guys. These are just examples that we've been able to use in our lives, but I hope that they serve of some good in any part of any of either one of our stories. I mean, we're giving quick snapshots of these.
I haven't even mentioned, you know, I feel like Childish Gambino was a part of my healing process, you know. Not okay. Is that jealousy that I feel?
Honestly, it was me like, I want to hear that story, but you had to just go take it. There you go. Really That's going to be another episode. Don't make any assumptions. Okay, sorry, what?
No, I'm just saying, like, really quickly, I remember during that time, I would run a lot. I mean, 5, 7 miles, 9 miles. I would just go. And I used to have Childish Gambino on repeat the whole time. Firefly. You don't even know about that.
I'm dead.
But you know, there's different pieces of the healing journey that, you know, now in hindsight, I look back and I was like, like what else was a part of my healing? Now that we're talking about it, what else was a part of my healing journey? And it's just little things like that. Like music can be a part of your healing journey, you know, and we have to give credit to those things too, because then when we go through it again and we need to heal again, then guess what? We got to pull out that song. We got to pull out those 7-mile runs and do the things.
You heard it here first, folks. Vulnerability tour. Everyone stay safe, stay home. We catch y'all later. Peace.